If you have an I-130 family petition filed, or you are about to file one, the February 2026 USCIS update about I-130 processing priorities is the kind of change that can quietly move your case forward faster or push it back, even if nothing about your relationship or eligibility changed. And the reason this matters is simple. When USCIS changes what it works first, it changes how long people wait, when they get RFEs, and when cases move to the next step like the NVC or adjustment of status. By the end of this video, you will know three things. First, what a processing priority shift actually means in plain English. Second, which groups are more likely to feel it and which groups are largely insulated. And third, exactly what you should do right now to reduce delays and protect your case without guessing. Here is the part most people miss. A priority shift is not the same thing as your priority date, and it is not the same thing as a new rule that changes eligibility. It is mainly about workflow and triage. But workflow changes can still hit real families hard, especially if you are planning travel, expecting a work permit timeline, or counting on a certain processing time to coordinate a move. So let us slow this down and make it practical. USCIS uses the I-130 to decide one core thing: whether a qualifying family relationship exists for immigration purposes. It is the front door for many family-based green card paths. But after an I-130 is approved, the process can look very different depending on where the beneficiary is located and what category they are in. Some people go through consular processing with the National Visa Center and a U.S. consulate abroad. Others file adjustment of status inside the U.S. And some categories have visa number limits that create long waits even after approval. That is why you may see two families both file I-130s and get completely different timelines. Now, what changed in February 2026, based on your brief, is that USCIS officially changed I-130 processing priorities. USCIS does sometimes announce that it is prioritizing certain case types, certain workloads, or certain service centers to improve overall cycle time, reduce aging inventory, or meet internal goals. A priority shift can mean cases are resorted, moved between teams, or worked in a different order than people expect. It can also mean that certain filings are more likely to get reviewed sooner, which can lead to faster approvals for some and more waiting for others. This is where people get confused, so let us do a quick definitions moment. When people hear the word priority, many immediately think priority date, the date that controls your place in line for a visa number in the family preference categories. That is a different concept. Processing priority is the order USCIS decides to pick up and work files. Priority date is the line for visa availability for categories that have annual limits. Those two interact, but they are not the same. Myth versus reality. Number 1. Myth. If USCIS changes I-130 processing priority, my priority date changes. Reality, your I-130 filing date and the category rules for priority dates do not change just because USCIS adjusts what it works first. The priority shift is about internal processing order, not changing your place in the visa line. Now let us talk about who is affected versus who is not, because this is where you can save yourself months of stress by understanding which bucket you are in. Start with the broad buckets. Bucket 1 is people who already filed an I-130 and are waiting for a decision. Bucket 2 is people who have not filed yet. Bucket 3 is people whose I-130 is already approved and they are in the NVC stage or adjustment stage. The priority shift primarily impacts buckets 1 and 2 because it affects which I-130s get picked up and how quickly they get to an officer. If you are in bucket 3, you might not feel this change directly, but you might still see indirect effects if USCIS resources shift around or if more cases get approved and flood the next stage faster. Now, within Bucket 1, the most affected group tends to be anyone whose case is in a category or workflow that USCIS is de-emphasizing compared to other groups. I cannot tell you your exact category will be prioritized or deprioritized without a specific USCIS document in front of us, and you should not rely on rumors. But here is how to think about it. If USCIS says it is prioritizing certain family petitions, that usually means those are the ones more likely to get pulled from the queue first or worked with fewer handoffs. If you are not in those targeted workflows, your case can still move, but you may see the line in front of you get rearranged. Here is a practical way to identify whether you might feel the change. Ask these questions. 1. Are you an immediate relative case or a family preference case? Immediate relatives are typically spouses of U.S. citizens, unmarried children under 21 of U.S. citizens, and parents of U.S. citizens who are over 21. Family preference categories include things like adult children and siblings, and spouses and children of permanent residents, and they are subject to annual limits. Even though all of these use the I-130, the later steps and the urgency profile can differ. 2. Are you doing consular processing abroad or adjustment of status in the U.S.? Some I-130s are filed as standalone petitions and later go to NVC. Others are closely tied to a plan to adjust in the U.S. 3. Is your case clean and straightforward on paper? Or are there built-in complexity factors that tend to trigger more review, like missing documents, prior immigration history, name variations, or difficult-to-document relationships? A priority shift can make straightforward cases move quickly, while complex cases take longer, or sometimes the opposite if USCIS decides to focus on older, stuck, or complicated files. Here is a micro hook to keep you with me. A small detail in your I-130 packet can decide whether you benefit from a priority shift or get hit with an RFE at the worst possible time. We will cover that checklist in a few minutes. Now, who is not affected, or at least not directly affected, by an I-130 processing priority shift? If your I-130 is already approved, the priority shift does not undo that approval. If your case is currently waiting on a visa number in a family preference category, a faster I-130 decision does not automatically create a visa number. You still have to wait for your category and country to be current and for the NVC or adjustment process to move. If you are at the NVC stage, your main bottlenecks are typically documentarily complete review, interview scheduling, and consulate capacity, not the I-130 queue. Another myth versus reality moment. Myth: if my I-130 is approved, I can travel to the U.S. whenever I want. Reality: an I-130 approval is not a visa, not a green card, and not travel permission by itself. Travel depends on what status you have, what visa you have, and your admissibility at the port of entry. Now let us address the big question. Why would USCIS do this in the first place? USCIS is constantly balancing competing pressures, reducing overall backlogs, meeting processing time goals, responding to humanitarian and policy priorities, and managing staffing. It also has to handle surges. For example, when certain filing windows open, or when fee changes or policy changes cause more people to file at once, it can create lopsided workloads at different service centers. When that happens, USCIS may shift work, create new teams, reassign cases, or change how it triages case types. Another reason is aging inventory. If older cases are sitting too long, USCIS may decide to prioritize them to reduce the number of extreme wait cases, even if that means newer cases take longer. And sometimes USCIS prioritizes cases that unlock downstream benefits, like allowing a person to move to the next stage faster. None of that is a guarantee of faster processing for everyone. It is a redistribution. Two groups are at highest risk of frustration during a priority shift: People who assume first-in, first-out processing will always apply. And people who make irreversible plans like quitting a job, selling a home, or booking non-refundable travel based only on average processing times. Now, real-world consequences. Let us talk about what this looks like in your life, not in a USCIS spreadsheet. First consequence, you may see more uneven timelines. Your friend who filed after you might get approved before you. That can happen even without a priority shift, but a priority shift can amplify it. Second consequence, you may see a higher rate of RFEs or notices in certain cohorts if USCIS is pushing to complete cases faster and wants missing pieces quickly. Third consequence, you might see transfers. Cases can be moved between service centers or processing units. A transfer is not automatically bad, but it can reset expectations and sometimes changes the speed. Fourth consequence, your next steps might hit new bottlenecks. If a lot of I-130s get approved quickly and move to NVC backlogs can become more noticeable and consulates can have varying appointment availability. Now, let me give you two example scenarios, because this is where it becomes clear. Example Scenario 1. A U.S. citizen files an I-130 for a spouse abroad and expects a certain timeline based on last year average processing. After the February 2026 priority shift, that petition is picked up faster than expected, and the couple suddenly needs civil documents, police certificates, and financial sponsorship paperwork sooner than they planned. That sounds like a good problem, but it is still a problem if you are not ready. They scramble, submit incomplete documents, and get delays at NVC. The lesson: faster I-130 action can create a paperwork sprint, and the delay simply moves to the next stage if you are unprepared. Example, Scenario 2. A permanent resident files an I-130 for an unmarried adult child. They watch online forums and see people getting approvals quickly and assume they are next. But their case is in a workflow that is not being prioritized, or it has a complexity flag like missing proof of termination of a prior marriage, and it takes longer. They start to panic and file duplicate inquiries, which does not speed anything up. The lesson: a priority shift can create noise and uneven outcomes. Your best move is to keep your case clean, track official updates, and avoid actions that create confusion in your file. Now we get to the most important part: what to do right now. Not legal advice, just a practical, safe checklist that reduces the most common avoidable delays when USCIS touches your I-130. Do this. 1. Confirm your receipt notice and your case number are correct, and keep digital and paper copies. Make sure you can log into your USCIS online account if your case is eligible to be tracked there. 2. Check that USCIS has your current mailing address. Missing a notice can cost weeks or months. 3. Build a clean evidence packet folder now, even if you already filed, proof of petitioner citizenship or permanent residence, marriage certificate if applicable, divorce decrees or death certificates for any prior marriages for either spouse, birth certificates showing parent-child relationships, adoption records if relevant, and any name change documents. If your case is a spouse petition, keep ongoing relationship evidence organized in case USCIS asks later. 4. Prepare for the next stage early. If consular processing is expected, start collecting civil documents and reviewing what is typically required for the affidavit of support. If adjustment of status is expected, keep copies of entry records and status documents. 5. Monitor official processing times, but do it the right way. Look at USCIS processing time ranges for the Form and Service Center and compare your receipt date to the outside normal time frame. If you are still within normal, repeated inquiries rarely help. Here is a micro hook. This is where people get delayed the most, not because USCIS hates them, but because they miss a simple notice deadline. So avoid this. 1. Do not submit duplicate I-130s for the same beneficiary just because you are anxious unless you have verified a true filing failure with USCIS or a qualified professional. Duplicate filings can create confusion. 2. Do not rely on social media claims that a certain category is guaranteed to be approved faster now. Use USCIS statements and your own case status. 3. Do not ignore an RFE or notice, and do not respond with a partial packet. If you get an RFE, respond with a single organized response that addresses each item. 4. Do not make travel plans that assume an approval date. If you are abroad, do not assume an I-130 approval equals an interview soon. If you are in the U.S., do not assume filing an I-130 alone gives you protection or work authorization. 5. Do not send original irreplaceable documents unless specifically required, and keep proof of delivery for anything you mail. Now, myth versus reality number 2. Myth: if USCIS changed priorities, I should immediately request an expedite. Reality: expedite is typically limited to specific circumstances and evidence, and a general policy change or normal hardship usually is not enough by itself. Another myth versus reality. Myth: contacting a congressional office always speeds up an I-130. Reality: congressional inquiries can sometimes help clarify status or fix a clear error, but they do not override normal processing for most cases. Use that tool carefully and honestly. So what should you watch next, especially after a February 2026 update? Watchpoint 1. USCIS processing time updates and any official guidance clarifying what the priority shift means operationally. Watchpoint 2. Whether your case gets transferred and whether USCIS posts transfer notices or changes to service center workloads. Watchpoint 3. The downstream stages. If you are headed to NVC, watch NVC document review timelines and the specific consulate interview capacity where the beneficiary will interview. Watchpoint 4. For family preference categories, keep an eye on visa availability trends. Even if I-130s are processed faster, visa number availability is a separate constraint. Watchpoint 5. Demand surges. If people rush to file because they think a new priority is a short window, that can create new backlogs. Another microhook. The next 30 to 90 days after a workflow shift is when the data can look the weirdest, because cases are being moved around behind the scenes. That is why your best strategy is to focus on what you can control: correctness, completeness, and responsiveness. Let us do a quick mini-guide for people in specific groups, because this makes the video shareable to the right family member. If you already filed an I-130 and you are waiting, make sure your address is updated, your account access works, and your evidence copies are organized so you can respond fast if USCIS asks for something. If you are about to file, focus on a clean, complete filing with clear identity documents and relationship proof, and double-check every name, date, and prior marriage document so you do not trigger an avoidable RFE. If you are a sponsor, start preparing financial documents early so you are not scrambling later, and understand that the affidavit of support step is serious and requires accuracy. If you are the beneficiary abroad, plan your civil document collection now, because some documents take weeks to obtain. If you are in the U.S. and considering adjustment of status, do not assume an I-130 alone is enough. Understand that work authorization and travel permission depend on what you file and your eligibility, and verify with official sources. Now let us recap everything in a calm, no-panic way. 1. USCIS changing I-130 processing priorities in February 2026 means the order and speed of I-130 casework may shift, even if eligibility rules did not change. 2. This is not the same as your priority date, and it does not automatically create or remove visa numbers. 3. Some people may see faster action, others may see delays, and uneven timelines are normal during a shift. 4. The most important protection is a clean, organized case, correct addresses, complete documents, and fast, complete responses to any USCIS notice. 5. Watch official USCIS updates and your own case status, and be careful about making irreversible life plans based on average timelines or online anecdotes. If you want, tell me in the comments which category you are in and whether you filed already or you are preparing to file. Do not share sensitive personal information, just the general category and month you filed. If this video helped you understand what this February 2026 I-130 priority shift could mean, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, especially if USCIS clarifies who is being prioritized or we see measurable processing time changes. Stay calm, stay organized, and keep your case paperwork ready so you are not caught off guard when USCIS picks it up.